Jim, you worked with George Scott in 1989 when he got sacked for failing to promote the Clash of Champions special featuring the world title rematch between Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair in the second match of their epic trilogy. Do you recall how George took to the news that he was getting shit canned for not promoting the Clash special? Also, did you ever see him again after his firing?
Well, I don't know how he took the news, because I would have loved to have been in the room when they told him, but I wasn't allowed to be. They didn't inform me ahead of time. We just heard about it afterwards. No, I never saw his sorry ass again. I'd never liked him from the first day we were introduced to him. He was a prick to Bobby Eaton. I don't think he's ever spoken to him yet, even though we had one meeting with the guy and we've stood in a few hallways with him. I don't think he had ever seen us before. His quote was, I don't have any idea what I'm going to do with you guys. He wandered in there to that position as the chief rival to the WWF and Vince McMahon and the second biggest wrestling company in the country, not having a goddamn clue about what had gone on before, who most of the talent was, and brought back people that he had worked with not even fucking 10, but 15 years previously, without even bothering to acclimate himself on what the fuck was going on, and then working for a television company. Didn't promote the only thing that was doing any business, which was the TV ratings were still pretty good at that point. Turner was already pretty much sabotaging the house show system, but he didn't promote the Clash of Champions, the TBS's baby, the owner's baby, because he didn't want to hurt the fucking gates at towns that already weren't drawing to begin with. I have never seen anything like this fucking guy in my life. And I'd always heard what a genius booker he was, and my response has always been that he had the best talent in the world, and he let them do the angles that they would do around the country to get themselves over, is my only guess as to why this guy ever fucking made any money anywhere.
Of course, you would work with his brother, Sandy Scott, in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Did you ever talk to him about George?
No, you didn't bring it. Every once in a while when Sandy was telling a story, if it would involve his wrestling career, he would say, my brother. And my brother did this, and then I did that, the drop kick or whatever. He was given a finish, or my brother and I worked with those guys. He wouldn't even say his name. They didn't speak for 20 something years over a family matter of some description. And I talked to people when George Scott came in the first day, somehow or another at TBS, he and Sandy with some other people ended up getting the same elevator. And I asked people who were in the elevator, and they said it was the first time they'd probably seen each other in person in 20 years, and they both got in the elevator without even looking or talking to each other, and fucking rode up and got off. So, I was definitely in the Sandy Scott camp. I liked Sandy a whole lot better than I liked George.
Were there any similarities in the two at all?
Well, I don't know, because I said I stood in two hallways with George Scott, had one meeting with him, and watched his booking for 2 months. So I don't know that I ever had any other personal conversation with the fucking guy. Because at that time, even laying out television, he would have, because he made Paul Jones an assistant, because, they went way back. But he would have a lot of the stooges at least give us our shit. I'll send the fucking assistants over to goddamn talk to the Midnight Express and those guys. I'm going to talk to Ricky Steamboat because he's my boy. Steamboat was the only positive thing that came out of that regime.
Was there any one of his stooges that particularly liked the fact that you guys were being treated this way?
I'm sure there were. And also he brought his son in, Byron Scott. Oh, Bobby Eaton, of all people, who's never had a bad thing to say about. He would roll his fucking eyes whenever that fucking guy's name was mentioned. He had some type of unsavory background or whatever the fuck. Let's just put it that way. He looked like he was on some kind of something. And he was such an obvious stooge, Bobby would act it out. When guys would be in the corner at TV or in the locker room or whatever, kind of talking, like quietly to each other, 2 or 3 of them. This fucking guy, I wish I had video now. He would walk by and he would almost, trying to listen with his left ear, he'd almost lean over sideways like a limbo dancer, trying to listen to your conversation, and Bobby would mimic that. And it's fucking hilarious because his son was trying to stooge for him, and he brought in Jay Strongbow's son as the breakdancing fucking patriot who was fishy white with buggy whip arms, weighed about 190 pounds. couldn't fucking break dance very well. And it was an abortion. But that's why we quit. We gave our notice. We said, we're not going to work for George Scott. We gave our notice that when our contracts were going to be up, we were leaving, and we were finishing out our fucking 4-week notice, and they fired him before we finished. They asked us to come back before we actually finished up.
Who was it that actually realized, if you know this or not, we have to fire him? I mean, because it wasn't like they were wrestling geniuses at TBS who would go, oh, he blew the Clash of Champions. Who was it who made the call and realized this is a disaster?
It was TBS when they got the ratings in from the Clash of Champions and started asking people why they fucking sucked so bad. And who was it at TBS? Was it Bob? It wasn't Bob Do that early. Who was it? Goddamn, I've forgotten. Jeff Carr was one of the early TBS people at that point. I can't remember. But it was one of the marks at TBS that they had nominated to oversee the wrestling company.